If you care about how ordinary people actually survived history, not kings, not knights, but the masses who endured famine, war, and disease, then you're in the right place. Before we go any further, subscribe to the Global War Archive and share this video, because what we're covering today is foundational knowledge for anyone serious about medieval history and long-term survival under extreme scarcity. This is not romanticized medieval feasting. This is about calories, endurance, and food systems built to keep people alive when collapse was the norm. What most people get wrong about medieval food right from the start is assuming hunger was occasional rather than constant. For the vast majority of medieval Europeans, especially peasants, food was not about enjoyment. It was about stretching resources, avoiding starvation, and, honestly, just surviving the winter. Cheap meals were repetitive, monotonous, and engineered for efficiency long before the word even existed. Medieval society lived just one failed harvest away from disaster. Climate instability, war, taxation, and disease meant that food security was, well, fragile at best. Cheap meals were not temporary emergency food. They were actually the baseline diet for most of the population. These meals relied on ingredients that could be grown locally, stored without refrigeration, and cooked with minimal fuel. The logic behind them is, honestly, brutally practical and extremely relevant to anyone interested in survival today. So the most important lesson here is that medieval survival meals were actually systems, not just recipes. You see, each meal was really designed to solve several problems at once, things like calories, preservation, digestion, and of course cost. And, understanding that mindset is the real value here. The single most common cheap meal in medieval Europe was, well, pottage. Now, this wasn't a specific dish, but rather a whole category of thick soups or stews made by boiling grains, vegetables, and whatever scraps happened to be available. Barley, oats, rye, or peas formed the base, simmered for hours in a single pot that might never be fully cleaned. Over time, that pot accumulated flavor, bacteria-resistant acidity, and nutrients, creating a meal that was, honestly, greater than the sum of its parts. Pottage mattered because, well, boiling extracts maximum nutrition from low-quality ingredients. Tough greens, dried legumes, and coarse grains all became digestible through long cooking, making every bit count. For survivalists today, this really demonstrates why slow-cooked one-pot meals are optimal when fuel and ingredients are limited. A modern equivalent would be stretching lentils, cracked wheat, or oats into a dense stew that can be reheated repeatedly without waste, making the most out of every resource. Bread was everywhere, but it was not the soft white bread most people imagine. Cheap medieval bread was dark, dense, and made from mixed grains. Rye, barley, oats, and sometimes ground peas were used, often containing husks and fillers. This bread was filling, slow to digest, and nutritionally superior to refined flour. Stale bread was not thrown away. It was soaked in broth, ale, or water, and eaten as a porridge-like meal. This practice maximized calories while reducing chewing effort, which was, really important for people with poor dental health. The survival lesson here is clear, dense, whole grain carbohydrates stored dry are among the most reliable long-term food sources ever used. While meat was rare for the poor, dairy products were, honestly, absolutely crucial. Milk was often converted into butter, cheese, or curds to prevent spoilage. Cheap cheeses, especially hard or fermented ones, were calorie-dense and transportable. Animal fat, whether from pigs or cows, was used sparingly but, strategically to boost energy intake. Fat matters because, well, it dramatically increases caloric density. Medieval people understood this intuitively. Just adding a small amount of fat to grain-based meals made them far more sustaining. For modern survival planning, this really reinforces the importance of fats like oils, ghee, or rendered animal fat as calorie multipliers rather than primary foods. Root vegetables like turnips, onions, leeks, and cabbage were staples because they grew in poor soil and stored well. Wild greens, nettles, and herbs were commonly added to pottage, especially in spring when stored food ran low. Water sources back then were often contaminated, so interestingly, weak ale became a daily drink, even for children. Brewed with low alcohol content, it offered hydration, calories, and a few nutrients from grains. Plus, the brewing process actually helped to sterilize the liquid. So, the practical application is actually pretty straightforward. You want to build your meals around grains and legumes that store well. Use long cooking methods to really extract all the nutrition you can. And don't forget to preserve food through drying, fermentation, and fat storage. It's important to accept monotony in exchange for reliability. Medieval people survived not because they ate well, but because they ate intelligently within their constraints. These kinds of meals kept entire populations alive through centuries of instability. They're proof that survival nutrition doesn't require variety or luxury, just consistency and, well, knowledge. If this deep dive helped you understand history at a more realistic level, please subscribe to the Global War Archive, share this video with fellow history buffs, and stay tuned. We're here to study how people survived the worst conditions humanity has ever faced, so we can understand both the past and the realities of endurance today.